So Techqueria, we are a community of Latinx professionals in the tech industry. As you may know, we are currently the largest community that is hosted online, predominantly based in a Slack community. And we also have platforms and kind of membership throughout the United States. With things being virtual though, you probably will just find us via Zoom or your favorite social media outlet. Our mission is to help empower Latinx folks in the tech industry through professional development and outreach programming, events, and mentorship opportunities. And fortunately for us, we're always in good company, as you'll see tonight. And I'm going to actually pass this off to my pal, Frankie, who is going to share a little bit more.
Hello, hello.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think the slides are catching up.
Ooh.
There we go. Cool. Can everybody hear me? We're good?
You're good.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Frankie Lopez. I'm an account manager out of New York and also the co-lead of Latinx at Adyen, here at Adyen. We wanted to just give you a quick intro about us. Adyen is one of the world's leading tech companies, providing an end-to-end payments infrastructure for all our clients. These clients include Facebook, Spotify, Uber, just to name a few. We have 24 plus offices globally, with our headquarters actually based in Amsterdam, which is really cool. On top of all this interesting stuff and our interesting business, we also have really cool employee perks, such as regular trips to Amsterdam on a yearly basis, and also an exchange program where you're able to work from another office anywhere in the world for a period of time. On to the next slide, please. Cool. So the Agin Formula, this is the foundation of how Adyen conducts business and makes decisions, and we attribute a big part of our success to it. One thing that I would actually really like to highlight is we include different people to sharpen our ideas. We believe that this is especially relevant for today's panel. We at Adyen are dedicated in finding different people with unique backgrounds, and to actualize something like that, there needs to be an environment where folks can come in and truly feel like they can be their authentic self. Moving on to the next slide. So outside of the panel, which is going to be amazing, we also wanted to make sure we provided some more takeaways. So after the event, we'll be booking 5 get to know you networking sections, conversations with Amanda, our recruiter, myself, and Vanessa, who is also the other co-lead for Latinx at Adyen, for those who want to know a little bit more about the opportunities that we have. And then on to the last slide. Lastly, here's a slide of open roles we have at Adyen across North America. Please feel free to go to our career site if there is any interest, or please reach out to anyone at Adyen that you see from this panel or from anything today, and we'd be more than happy to talk to you. But to close out, thanks for attending the event. And now introducing our head of account management in North America, Eric Mahecha.
Thank you, guys. No matter how many times we practice, I completely missed that. So sorry about that. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And I'm really thankful to be here. Especially thankful that I've been managed to find a reason to change out of my 1 of 4 sweatsuits that I've been wearing for the last year. So this is a fresh shirt. So thank you for inviting me. I want to let the panel introduce themselves. So when I call out your name, please give a little bit about yourself. So Laura, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Laura Dominguez. Laura for today, if you'd like. I'm a career services manager at FlockJ, and FlockJ is a tech sales bootcamp where we retain non-traditional folks that are looking to break into the tech space, primarily through tech sales and like non-technical roles. And as a career services manager, I work with our students once they graduate to place them at tech sales roles at companies that are our hiring partners. And super excited to be here today and be part of this conversation that I think is so relevant to everything that's been happening in like the current world that we live in. So thank you for having me.
Great, great. Miguel, let's hear a little bit about you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miguel Castillo. I'm a UX UI designer, and I work for Mission Asset Fund. We're a nonprofit organization that provides asset building products to low-income and immigrant communities. I'm also part of Dreamers in Tech, who's trying to bridge the gap between the undocumented community and the tech industry.
Great, great. Sarah.
Great. I am at Adyen as well. My name's Sarah. I lead our commercial partnerships for North America. Shameless plug, one of those roles on the previous slide is on my team. So if anyone's interested, I'm always happy to chat as well. We oversee on the commercial partnerships team our services partners as well as our technology partners. So manage relationships like Oracle and Salesforce. But really excited to be here today and chatting with the other panelists.
Okay, and Sophia.
Hi everyone, I'm Sofia Rodriguez Mata. I'm a director of community at Benify, a company which invented the machine identity management category. If you have questions about search management, don't ask me because I'm a non-tech person in a tech industry.
A lot of us are. So let's talk about being your authentic self. I guess let's first discuss what does that mean, right? So Laura, let's come back to you. You know, what does it mean to be your authentic self?
Eric, what did I do to you with all this picking on Laura going first?
That's it. So this is where we're going to start.
To me, being authentic in the workplace means you really have the freedom to show up as yourself fully every day with your coworkers, with your colleagues. And so being empowered to share feedback, having the opportunity to have direct channels to whether it's leadership or folks laterally, to just be yourself and share your ideas and know that they'll be taken into consideration to make decisions. So that's what authenticity in the workplace means to me, is just to be able to show up as yourself every single day.
Miguel, do you see it any different?
No, I mean, I'd also like to add that, you know, it's accepting your identities and knowing that they're actually strengths and being able to put those forward, and letting those identities lead you in your work.
So, Sarah, what prevents people from being their authentic self?
Yeah, so I think that there are multiple things that can prevent people from being their authentic self. I think if you find yourself in a work environment or a social setting that you are worried might not be accepting of who you are, that can be one. I think the other is not showing that there's an appreciation and representation for diverse ideas and people can make it harder for someone to feel like they can actually show up being their authentic self.
Yeah. Sophia, do you feel the same way?
As far as what prevents people from being their authentic selves? Yeah, I think, you know, put a disclaimer to what I'm saying, that for a lot of us, and maybe for a lot of people in the audience, you know, you're in a place, maybe a toxic environment where you can't really be your authentic self. And if you are in that place, I send you all my love, and I hope that you can get out of that type of place. But it is something where I think when you do find a place where you can't be authentically yourself, you end up forming deeper relationships with people, which are really at the core of what we need to be happy. I mean, the workplace is where most of us spend most of our time. And so being able to be in a place where you can be your best self, like, that's what we need. Someone went to the bathroom.
Sophia, you mentioned building, I forget the word you used, a stronger bond. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. You know, I think if you just think of the ways that we as humans evolved over time to form relationships for survival, it was really around proximity, how close we were to each other. And so we formed these networks to be able to survive and eventually evolve. And when you're in the workplace, at least when we were in person and even virtually, like, these are people that you're spending a lot of time with, you're in close proximity. And so this is likely where you're going to be forming relationships with people and getting to know more people. So that's what I meant around that. Like, you want to be able to be yourself in a place where you are likely going to be forming deep relationships that will impact you.
I guess the question is, how do you find that place, right? So I think we've all been in that journey of trying to find a place like that. And I, even personally, I'm fortunate at Adyen. It's great. But I've also been in those situations where you don't quite fit and had to adapt. Laura, let's come back to you, right? What do you look for when you're interviewing? And let me add to that, if you're one of these people in this toxic environment that we encourage you to look, right? It's always worth looking. What should they be looking at, and how should they go about that?
I think kind of twofold. So to Sophia's point of finding yourself in that toxic environment, also sending you all the love and support. And sometimes, as much as you want to be the change from within and try to find people that you can relate to and be yourself with at work, sometimes I really believe that fostering an environment where people can be authentic in the workplace needs to come from the top and from leadership and trickle down, and not the other way around. And so when you find yourself in that kind of environment, I think it's absolutely fair game to voice how you're feeling, and try to have those conversations, but also try to figure out who in your network, whether it's personal friends or your professional network, is somebody that maybe works at a company where they feel happy and they can be themselves, and reaching out to those people. Let's have a coffee chat or a conversation. How can I get involved with where you work, or just in any capacity, figure out where I can go from here, from this place where I'm not valued or can't be myself. And I think when you're interviewing and you're starting to have those conversations, when you're thinking about transitioning into a new company, as the candidate, you have the right to, and you should feel empowered to vet and interview your interviewer as much as they are trying to qualify you for that role. So it's asking those questions at the end when they say, what questions do you have for me? And instead of being cutesy and trying just to ask the right thing or say the right thing, it's about asking those tough questions. When a team member is struggling, what levers of support are there in place for them to improve? What types of resources do you offer to people of color at your company? And really trying to understand whether this is an environment that has even thought about certain folks from different backgrounds struggle with very specific issues or pain points, and what are we doing to help them feel at home here at this company. And if you're asking those questions, whether it's to a recruiter or a hiring manager, and they're at a loss for what to say, maybe keeping that in mind and continuing to ask those questions as you move up the food chain, so to speak, in your interviews. Because if you're finding that they just have nothing in place, whether it's ERGs or any kind of support groups or whatever, if there's none of that, you might want to consider looking at other companies and seeing what they're already doing. And if there's nothing in place, how would they plan to support you coming in and trying to start up something? And if those things are just not available to you and non-existent, it's definitely a yellow flag or a red flag to look out for and try to avoid during your job search.
Yeah, it's good advice. And I think, Miguel, we were talking about this a couple of days ago, right? You actually have some, you try to sprinkle in some trick questions, I think, try to make sure that you get some information, because, to Laura's point, right? When you ask these questions up front, you might get the generic answer, right? Just like we've all been great in our lives interviewing. Those interviewers have honed their skills as well. So Miguel, how do you gather some information where it's kind of off to the side?
Yeah, definitely. So I like to do what's called strategic word dropping, or interview them as much as they're interviewing us. For example, if you're interviewing around the holidays or around October, November, you can ask the company if they did any events, what did they do? And if all they can really reflect back is oh, we did a Halloween party and we all went got candy and had a big party, that shows to you that, oh, they obviously don't know what Dia de los Muertos is. They didn't acknowledge that this holiday is a really big holiday for Latinx people. Or also say things like dreamer or DACA and don't explain what that is. And then I wait for them to reply back and see how they navigate that, or to see if they have any information, or if they know that those are, you know, trigger words that show me that they're accepting to immigrant communities. Same thing can be said with acronyms like BIPOC or LGBTQ. If they, you know, drop those during the interview, then I know, oh, you are acknowledging my identity. Like that's, you know, meeting me halfway, making me feel comfortable. Because it's on them as much as us to interview each other and to see if it's a good fit. But one of my strategies is for sure to just sneak in a few words here and there to see how they react and see what they say.
Yeah. Good, good. Let's flip it on the other side, looking at it from the employer point of view, right? So Sarah, like you mentioned, you have positions available, and I think Adyen's grown so much. We're in constant interviewing, right? We talked a little bit about this, but what's the importance to you on the diversity on your team? How does that help you?
Yeah, so to me, I see it as absolutely fundamental to success, right? I think if you look at some of the most successful teams, companies around the world, what you'll often find is there's diverse representation of backgrounds, gender, cultural, or orientation identities. And I think for me, I'm really looking for people, I try and give them an opportunity to also bring their authentic self. So I think for interviewers, I love when it's not just, you know, let me read you the line item on my resume, but what motivated you? Where were you in your life that made you passionate about the work that you were doing then? Because I think that that provides better insight for me as an interviewer of what is this person hoping or seeking to get out of their next role, and what really kind of ignites them and brings passion to their work and their day-to-day. And I think as an interviewer, I just as much owe them to be authentic as well. And so I think it's fair to expect that from the person who's interviewing you, that if you show up and you share some of your authentic self, you would hope to see that the interviewer does the same. It kind of ties into the idea of vulnerability, right? And I think if someone's willing to show you a bit of who they are the first time they interview or meet you, then hopefully that can give you better insight into whether it'll be a good fit and if you're interested in working there.
Yeah, great. Laura, let's come back to you, right? So I think you have some experience in this. Same question to you. What does it mean for the interviewer and for the company itself to bring in diversity? What's the value there?
First, I'm going to ask Andres Velasquez to mute himself. Thank you. But so just to recap your question, so why is it important for companies to value diversity when hiring?
Yeah. And as an interviewer, what are you looking for?
Yeah, great question. I think something that I'm looking for when I conduct interviews, and that I hope a lot of recruiters and hiring managers are looking for, is really to step away from this idea of finding a culture fit and really start digging for a culture add. And so it's like framing the question of, you know, what is it that you would bring to this team that maybe we couldn't find in anyone else? And when you're answering that question as a candidate, like Sarah said, you're able to be more vulnerable, you're able to be yourself and really share maybe something more personal or unique to you that you're hoping that the company you join is actually going to celebrate rather than just like accept and whatever. So I think the value of growing for these hypergrowth tech companies in an equitable, like inclusive way and celebrating and seeking out diversity is to have so many different perspectives within each of their teams that folks are going to have different ideas and different points of views on what's not working or what's working and what can we double down on or what we improve. And if you have everybody coming from a very similar background or very similar experiences, your team, your company effectively becomes an echo chamber where everyone's just kind of group thinking and repeating the same things, and you really just block off any other areas of growth. And so you're doing your company as a disservice by being biased in the interview process. It doesn't matter what team or what position you are looking to hire for. I think every company should make it a goal to ensure that if I'm interviewing 10 people for this position, that like as many of them as possible are coming from all sorts of diverse, different backgrounds and are having different experiences that they can bring to the table. And really leveraging that. And then once they're in the company, I know this is not what you asked, but once they're in the company, not just listening to their ideas, but creating direct channels to where their ideas can be voiced to the people that are going to be decision makers. And whether it's, you know, creating or implementing processes or whatever, so that their ideas and that value add and culture add that they bring doesn't just stop at, I feel comfortable voicing what I'm thinking, but what's next after that?
Yeah, it's well put. I think I'm going to get yanked pretty soon because I think this is one of those topics that we could just go on forever. But I do want to ask one last question, and Sophia, let's end this with you. Let's go back to people trying to get out of their toxic environment, or just even just look for an environment, right? What advice would you give people to start, and what mindset should they be having when they're out there looking?
I want to double down on what Laura said. I think what she said is really important. When I was first looking for a job straight out of college, I felt so grateful to even get a call back, to get an email, to have someone even answer the phone, because I don't know who else has recently interviewed for a job, but you'll send out your resume 200 times and probably just get one call back. And so it almost beats you down to this feeling where you feel very grateful to even have the opportunity to speak to someone. But the moment that I personally shifted my mindset into really interviewing them, asking those difficult questions, seeing if they actually were a good fit for me, not just me being a good fit for them, it changed everything. And not just in the interview process, but especially in the negotiation and offer letter process, where I was asking them, what can you do for me? Or how much, what can I get out of this? And especially as I became more involved in tech, especially because I'm in Silicon Valley. I saw some of you are in Puerto Rico, New York, like all over the place. But in Silicon Valley, like when you start to see how much people make, especially software engineers, ya no te da pena. Like you're not embarrassed to ask for what you actually deserve. And that's, I think, again, like what Laura said, interview them and also advocate for yourself. It's always a conversation. Just because they say, I think you might be at this level or you're going to be in this grade, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the conversation. You are also part of that conversation.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you, guys. I really do think we could talk about this for another 3 hours, but I don't want the music to start. So let's start with some Q&A. So I think Ximena, what do you have for some questions out there?
Yeah, hi, sorry. I accidentally clicked the share button and got very scared. First question here is, how do you empower yourself knowing that your friends and family don't understand the tech industry?
Sure, who wants to take that? Don't make me pick.
I hope I understand this question. And if not, I'm looking at the chat, so please feel free to maybe explain it better. But for me, my industry is something that's very new. And when I try to speak to my family about it, they don't get it. They're always saying, are you just on social media? Are you on support? How do you do this on the computer? So there's definitely like that spectrum of just knowledge that isn't there. But what I've had to do is really build my own network within my friends, because I think I don't want to speak for all of us, but that reach into mentors or sponsors or people who can really bring you up isn't always accessible to us. So what I created instead was my own network of people who were at my level or a very near level, and we are all bringing each other up together. We all kind of understand our similar struggles. We're answering questions for each other. We're helping each other out. So what I wasn't necessarily able to find within my family, I found it in other people.
Good. Jimena, something else?
Yeah, we have another question. What might you recommend as key questions during the interview process to assess the company's commitment to DEI principles? And I think this was addressed a little bit, but any high-level notes?
This is super straightforward, and that's how I always that's my advice when folks are asking me what questions should I ask. And so I would say to that person, like, feel free to ask your interviewer, hey, can you share with me more about some DEI initiatives that the company has undertaken in the past year, any efforts or programs that you have available. And just like Miguel was sharing earlier, like if they don't know what DEI is, that's a problem. So just making it very direct, very clear, don't give them any help, and just ask them, like, what do you already have in place? What have you done in the past year? Because it's real easy for them to talk about things that they're planning and like they might happen at some point in the future, but what have you already done in the past 12 months to move forward with like DEI efforts, and see what they say. That's a good place to start.
There's a comment in the chat that someone recommended asking the percentage of, I think, BIPOC on leadership team, board, and just number of employees as well. Which actually brings me to another question that somebody asked, which is, how do you bring your authentic self while also not being the token, maybe being the very first or the only representative in your company?
Yeah, I think I can touch a little bit on that. Personally, in my experience, being like my full authentic self and bringing all my identities to the front has been kind of eye-opening, because my work is more creative, I'm more effective, I work faster. And I also realized when I wasn't being my full authentic self, what was happening was I was performing. I was creating this performance to like try to fit the mold. And then I realized that I was doing double the work, double the job. I was trying to do my duties, but also trying to perform in front of like my colleagues and stuff. And when that stopped, my work got quicker, I was more effective, and then I was happier. For representation, I think you just have to advocate for it. I think if the company doesn't have any of those representatives there, you just like voice them. Like for Pride Month, I felt really strong that we had to have like flags in front of the office, and I did mention that to HR. Yeah, I was a little sad that I had to say something and that company didn't do it on their own, but I wanted, the clients we serve at this company to feel welcome. And if I was going to be that bridge, or if that was going to happen because of my voice, then I was going to do it.
Performing is a great word in that situation. Yeah, that is very accurate.
I love this question, but next one is, and this I think is for anyone, what principles stood out to you at your current company during your own interview process that made you want to work there?
I'll take that one. I think one thing that stood out to me that I felt like was a conduit or a vehicle for allowing people to bring their authentic self and be also inclusive was this kind of part of our overarching formula, right? Is, how do we perform fastest together as a team, and low ego. I felt like both of those things were conduits that would allow for people to feel like they could be the authentic self, and also be recognized and validated, and acknowledged for what they brought to the table that might be different.
Well, thank you guys. I think we're at time. Yeah, I think we can move on to the next part.
Technical difficulties again. See, today's the day, y'all. Well, thank you so much for that great first panel. Just wait, there's going to be another panel coming up. And so good. Well, welcome back. Thank you, everyone who made it back. we'll see an influx of people coming in again. And so just so everyone knows, here is the agenda. We have another 30-minute panel. This time talking about imposter syndrome. So I'm gonna pass it over to Eric to lead the next part of our session. And in case you're still having some questions, feel free to drop them into Slido. And here is our code, which is 76391. All right, Eric, on to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Hopefully those breakout rooms were helpful. So we're going to talk about imposter syndrome, and this one's tough, right? This one is, I think, always in the back of most people's mind. And I know personally, I've suffered with it, I think, every day, right? So let's start like we did the last one. And Sophia, I'm going to pick on you since Laura's already upset with me. Let's get your view. Like, how would you define imposter syndrome?
So to me, imposter syndrome is the feeling of not feeling like you are smart enough, worthy enough, or like you belong in a place. And I think what's interesting about what we're seeing a lot in the space is that imposter syndrome is always pitched as a way to fix the individual, but the conversation around how the environment impacts you isn't always there. And when the imposter syndrome was originally done, it was done in the 1970s with PhD students. So even if we take a step back to think of how many Latinos have their PhD, and then we think back to how many had it in the 1970s, you can probably guess that their study group didn't include a lot of Latinos. So questions around, oh, I wonder if systemic racism affects why Latinos feel imposter syndrome. No one was asking that question. But to summarize, like imposter syndrome to me means you feeling like you're not good enough.
Right. Miguel, you find it the same way?
Yeah, and I would also touch on like the feelings that like you also experience with imposter syndrome, like the fear of getting like found out, or the fear that you're wrong, or the fear that you don't know what you're talking about. And those are very, very intense feelings that like you go through, and that like you have to navigate in front of people, which makes it like 10 times worse, because like most of the time when you're experiencing imposter syndrome, it's during a presentation, or it's like a few minutes before you have to speak to a group of like people that you might not even identify with. You know, it might be in front of men, it might be in front of a white space, it might be in front of predominantly straight people, and like you not having any of those identities, you start having this like reaction of imposter syndrome. And a few strategies that I use to get over imposter syndrome is just to start talking to yourself and acknowledging that imposter syndrome has been a thing from like a very young age, and it's not a new feeling. You know, like in high school, being the only person of color in AP classes, right? Or like as a creative in the tech industry, you know, being the only Latinx or queer person of color in UX UI. So it's not new. And so when I like start getting these feelings, I talk to myself and I'm like, Miguel, be gentle, because these feelings can be very destructive. And just, you belong, you're here, you went to school, you were trained, be gentle, and then just go for it.
Yeah.
But I like to not ignore what the body is doing. I don't want to ignore the feelings that are rising up, you know, like feel them, acknowledge them, and then tell yourself to be gentle.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you know, imposter syndrome really starts that negative talk, right? And then once that starts, it's just a downward spiral, and it gets really bad. And let's continue down that road. And how do we prevent that from happening? So Laura, and I'm going to come back to you, right? How do you prevent it and from that downward spiral, like Miguel? Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, I do actually. One that I discovered fairly recently. And I think to Miguel's point, having that sense of like not being good enough doesn't come just from anywhere. All of our life as Latinx people, whether it's in this country or in our own home country, I'm from Colombia, there is like this belief that is reinforced that people who look one way are smarter and people who don't aren't, or people who come from certain schools or certain social status are smarter and others aren't. And when you take years and years and years and decades of your life and you're put in, for example, a white space or whatever, you start having those very real feelings of like, I'm here by mistake, like who let me in? Let me not say anything because it's probably, you know, silly or stupid or wrong. Whenever I'm typing something on Slack, especially like company wide, or posting something on LinkedIn, you better believe I'm like triple Grammarly checking everything that I'm saying, because I'm like, if anybody makes a spelling mistake, like, oh, whatever. But if I make a spelling mistake, people are going to think it's because, you know, English is my second language and all these things. And that is, I think, all tied to like imposter syndrome. And so something that I like to think about is just to remind myself, everybody around you in any company, any setting, at any point in life, is just giving their informed opinion. And you are allowed and you should give your informed opinion because you're smart too. Instead of, I'm giving my opinion and what this other person is giving is fact, truth, end all be all. And I'm not at that level. So it's really kind of logically thinking about, Miguel, like Miguel said, acknowledging how you're feeling. It's not just nerves. Maybe it's imposter syndrome. Why am I feeling this anxiety? What I'm about to say, I've thought about. I know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to say it confidently, and I'm not going to hold myself back from sharing in this moment, because my opinion is just as worthy and valuable as everyone else's around me, regardless of how we look or where we came from.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So Sarah, like going off what Laura said, because imposter syndrome is so common, as someone who manages a team, and your goal is to get the best out of everybody, I would imagine you see imposter syndrome or the little remnants of it all over. How do you, and as in the company, how do you deal with that, right? How do you get people to get past it? Do you specifically bring it out, or is it more in the environment? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think something that's important, both when you're leading people or managing people, and also working at a company that really wants to promote, inclusivity and diversity. I found that I look back at every time that I've felt imposter syndrome or throughout my career, and what's really helped me, and the role of, champions, allies, and mentors. I think recognizing the people who you can surround yourself with, and what they can help do, whether it's being a resource if someone's not comfortable initially sharing in a larger group, allowing them to know that you are somebody that they can bounce their ideas off of if they want to gain some more confidence before they share it in a larger setting. I'm a big proponent. By no means is this an original idea. I think the women in the Obama administration did this, but helping elevate voices during a meeting, right? So if you hear somebody speak up, and you also might be aware that it's a big deal for them to speak up and share their idea, and for one reason or another it gets glossed over, as their ally or as a champion, say, helping reiterate what they said, repeating what they said and elevating it during the conversation. I think that's where together we can play a huge role in recognizing that we all feel this way at different times, but there's a role that everyone can play, especially as leaders in an organization.
Yeah. Sophia, the same question to you, right? And this isn't something where you need to manage teams. I think just as someone who recognizes it and in a different point in their life, how do you handle friends, family, right? How do you do that?
Friends who are feeling imposter syndrome?
Yeah, and helping people get out of it.
I'm actually so good at this. I am the resident friend who is the hype person. Like, I feel like I'm the go-to person when people are feeling imposter syndrome, because it really is just like Miguel was saying earlier, like you have to rationalize it and you have to ground people by really asking them to think through that anxiety and the problems. I'm like, you think you can't do this? Have you ever done this before? No. Okay, so why should you know how to do it? You know, it's just, I think with friends, you can have those conversations and you're always much kinder to your friends than you are to yourselves because we're so critical of ourselves. And so it's almost easy, it's second nature with friends. And I just try to do that for them and also think of how I approach my friends when I'm trying to talk myself out of imposter syndrome.
Good, good.
And I also think with friends specifically, Sophia, I've noticed that it's easier to ask those like dumb questions, you know, or like I
Yes.
remember when I like started with like the tech industry, like what's an ERG, or like what's going on, or like what are those tech terms that everyone keeps on saying that everyone's just is assuming everybody knows, you know. And I think with friends specifically, that bond or that like open communication is a strength. It can help with like whatever given like tech position you have.
Yeah. And that, you know, this is very tied to the last panel, right? Of being your authentic self and how the environment itself really does play a big part of it. So to your point, Miguel, right? It is easy to look stupid in front of a friend, right? But you know, there's that fear that you're doing it in front of your bosses or people you don't know and you get recognized. So you know, from a company point of view, I guess let's continue to expand on that. What are the things that the company should do along with mentoring? Is there anything else that can be done? And I'm leaving this open for all of you to pitch in here. What kind of environment should someone be looking at, and what, I guess let's start with there. What kind of environment really fosters the reduction of imposter syndrome? Yeah, I just threw that out there, so I'm sorry. I kind of caught you off guard. But that's why I'm gonna leave it open. Like what helps you besides the mentorship and everything else? What other type of environment helps you?
I think having a variety of ways of communicating or venues in which you're collaborating and sharing, right? Some people might feel a lot more comfortable speaking up or sharing their ideas in the group Slack or the group chat. Other people might feel a lot more comfortable speaking up in person or these days on camera, right? Sometimes I've noticed, myself included, just the act of standing up in a room can be a lot more, unnerving than if you're sitting around a table. So I think trying to create diverse experiences in which you communicate and collaborate can help allow people to hopefully overcome some of those, internal barriers that they might feel. Even doing some, like Zoom calls where everyone has their video off, right? Like maybe that's enough for people to feel like more empowered in order to speak up or share their opinion as well.
Any other thoughts?
I've also personally found it really helpful to have those conversations with my manager or my boss of like, what is going to make me feel safe in this relationship and what type of information I need in order to not feel imposter syndrome. And I've had very honest conversations with my manager about the fact that, hey, I am very critical of myself. And every time I turn something in or I send something on the Slack, just like we were talking about earlier, I've probably read it 20 times. And so when I do something well, I need to hear that, as well as when I am doing something maybe not so well. Like I need feedback in both those areas. And having that conversation has completely shifted the way that my manager treats me and how they treat other members of the team. Even so, in like what Sarah was saying, I don't do well in group meetings because I get very overwhelmed by a lot of people talking back and forth. And there's some people who are very assertive. Now, my manager knows that I need to process. But when I do process, like I'm coming up with really great ideas. So I think if you are in a place where you can have a very honest and authentic conversation with your manager and even your teammates about what you need to be successful, have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it sounds like the support group is really key here. There's only so much you can do alone, right? I think getting rid of the negative talk is key, right? You do have to do that. I think just in life in general, right? But really finding your allies and finding people that could really help you. That's what it sounds like that would be beneficial.
Yeah. And I think, recognize that, the manager that you get paired with or put under may not be the person you feel comfortable with. I think there have been many times in my career where the person I directly report to may or may not be somebody that I can feel like I can have as honest of a conversation as Sophia is able to have with her manager, which is amazing. But it doesn't happen sometimes. But if there's another person in the organization that you just naturally gravitate to, or feel like you can be a bit more, honest, and you're looking for that type of advice, like by all means, like I think you should feel empowered to reach out to them. I've had people reach out to me that are on other teams, and I think overwhelmingly you'll find that the response is very receptive.
Laura, are you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say another like practical thing. If part of your imposter syndrome is coming from feeling like the questions that you want to ask are dumb questions, maybe you can think about proposing that your company hosts an anonymous Ask Me Anything with like different department leads or even your CEO. At FlockJ bi-weekly, our CEO hosts Founders Lunch and Learn Ask Me Anything. We use Slido. People post their questions anonymously and then people upvote them. And so when you're thinking like, man, I really want to ask this question, but I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm doing, having the opportunity to anonymously ask and then seeing that 15 people in your company upvoted your question because they're wondering the same thing, it just reassures like you're not the only one who's lost. You genuinely want to know something that's unclear. And if your founder or your CEO or your team lead or manager can host that space bi-weekly, monthly, quarterly, just to answer all of those questions, it can provide a lot of clarity, and it can also just validate the fact that you're not in the wrong for having those questions. It's a practical fix.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that having open communication about like mistakes and just make it a norm that mistakes will be made. We're all human, something might slip, or we might not hit the goal, but it's okay. It was a learning process. We're gonna shift the energy, and it wasn't for nothing. Because once you feel like the stakes are so high and like this is like the one solution, you can't be creative anymore, and like because you have fear. So just within your managers or within your teams, just making it known that mistakes are okay. And as a team, we'll take accountability for the mistake and we'll grow.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, Miguel, because there is another side to, and this, in my opinion, there's another side to imposter syndrome, which can be healthy, because the last thing you want is to be on the completely other side of the spectrum where you think you know everything, right? And you don't make any mistakes, and then you're the people that actually cause other people to have imposter syndrome. But so having I think it's just finding that balance and finding that support group of being able to be critical, but being understanding it's okay to make mistakes, right? You guys see it the same way? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I think having you guys at Techqueria and seeing people like yourself going through different experiences is what helps. Even as I was 3 years, almost, but 3.5 years into the company already at HPE, I didn't even know what an ERG was, and I joined one, and there wasn't one for Latinos then until later. So. Good. Support groups is what does it.
Yeah, like not just this one, but your family, your friends. I think that's the main takeaway here, right? Find your friends, find your peers, and Sarah, to your point, it doesn't always have to be your direct boss. A lot of the times, unfortunately, it isn't, right? But it could be anybody at any level. And I think that sounds like that. It sounds to me like that's an important piece, right? It doesn't always have to be up the chain. It could be across, down, whatever, or someone just at a completely different point in their lives. So listen, I think this is another topic that we could really dig into, but I'm going to get yanked again. So I think let's let's get into some Q&A here. Shamina, do we have any questions for the team here?
So we do have a few, but I encourage people to continue to ask questions to Slido. One of the questions is, Sophia mentioned fixing imposter syndrome is often towards individuals. How can you help a space that you work in address imposter syndrome?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? Let's just make sure we got it.
Sure. I think what they're asking is, a lot of times when it comes to fixing imposter syndrome, it's targeted towards an individual. And this person is asking, how do you address imposter syndrome, I think in a wider space, like maybe across your whole company?
That's tough.
I can share. I'm not on the panel, but I may have a suggestion. So I transitioned careers from education to marketing / tech and all that greatness. And something that really helped me when I started out was having like that vulnerability set out front. So giving clear expectations of like what kind of feedback you like, what kind of feedback you don't like, and then also like going through, and we did this a lot when I was teaching too, like giving examples of like how to react and how not to react. And that sounds so like immature, but it really helped me feel comfortable in my workplace. Especially when I first entered tech, like I had a very casual boss and I had like that dream tech situation where like my office was super chill and we had a Pac-Man machine. And I was like, oh, okay, like, what do I do? Like, how do I even come to work? And like, we went through that in my onboarding. Like, I legitimately was told, like, please do not ever wear anything that you would go to a meeting in, like wear jeans and slack, like jeans only, sweatpants would be preferred, like yoga pants are the best. Here we go. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks. Like, because I was so paranoid my first day. Like I walked in like dressed to the nines, ready to work. And I was like, oh my God. So I think, you know, really providing that during onboarding is something that would really help most folks that are experiencing imposter syndrome.
I think something else, if you really want to be out there, is find an article about imposter syndrome or one of the articles that folks have shared in the chat, and like draft up a quick little email, like make it company wide, you know, middle of the week, random time of day. Hi all, found this article that you might find interesting, wanted to share with the team, would love to start a conversation, you know, it sounds like a really interesting topic, you know, and you'd be surprised, maybe some people will reach out to you directly and like want to talk about it, but that's one way to like find community within your company from other folks that are looking into the same types of topics. And obviously like sending a company-wide email is not for the faint of heart, but I think with a topic like that, everybody should be able to see it's coming from a good place too.
Okay, another question we have is, do you have mentors that encourage you to feel more confident in your career? How did you find that mentor?
I can take that one. Yeah, I have a mentor that is like amazing. And it was somebody I worked not directly under in a job a really long time ago. And when I decided to do like a proper true career change, right, from going from practicing law into tech, I knew that he had worked in tech for a long time in business development. And I reached out to him and I said, look, I'm really interested in making a proper career transition, would love your advice. And it just naturally built a relationship from there. But I think you should feel empowered to reach out to somebody that you think could potentially be a great mentor. Also, don't be discouraged if it doesn't work out. There are people I've reached out to in the past and asked, and they've been very kind and given great advice, and then it just kind of stops, right? It tends to be, I think, to a certain extent, a really organic, natural evolution when you find a mentor that you end up having a long relationship with. But, you know, there's some trial and error, and along the way, you'll still meet some really great people and have some really great conversations and learn some great things, even if they're not going to be, you know, a long-term mentor in your life. But then when you find someone who can be, it's amazing when you need to call them randomly at 10 a.m. on a Thursday because you don't know how to have a conversation internally with, you know, your boss's boss. It's great to really have somebody like that. But you know, it takes time, I think, and a bit of trial and error.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that. And I don't think I'm supposed to answer questions, but I want to answer this one. You know, mentors, personally for me, I've had several, and I think that's something that I learned. I think that the idea of a mentor when I was younger was romanticized. You have this one person that carries you through your journey. But a lot of them have, honestly, I've outgrown, and a lot of them have just moved on to other things. And I think it's okay to think that you're going to have multiple mentors. It's okay to have several. Not everybody's good at everything. And you know, back to what we've been talking about, diversity is great here, right? Because not everybody's going to get your view. Now, I saw someone in the chat that they haven't found their mentor, and it is a tough quest. It is a tough quest, but you don't need to have that title, right? Anybody could be a mentor at any moment. It really is just putting yourself out there, learning from their experience and your experience, and going with it. You don't have to have that old man in a gray beard shuffling you down through your journey.
Yeah, I should further emphasize what Eric said. Just because I have one great mentor, there have been a lot of other people that have really served that role, and they've come in and out as well. So definitely don't want to inadvertently romanticize the idea that you'll find one person that can answer all of your career questions, because the reality is even though that person's great, he's a dude and he's very, you know, he's an ally and he's a champion, but it hasn't been a woman in certain situations. And I have other women that I go to that are great resources, and provide mentorship in it just in a different way.
And I'll quickly add to that as well. Just from when Eric mentioned the man in a gray suit, that is definitely not what any of my mentors look like either. But I think it is a tough quest to find mentors, and sometimes it happens organically, but like 1 year into working fully remote and like sitting in your living room or your kitchen for 9 hours out of the day, very hard to like organically meet a mentor. So don't be afraid to also be bold. This has worked for me, and like reach out to people on LinkedIn. Sarah and I connected on LinkedIn last night. I was like, your background is so cool. You went to the same law school as Kamala Harris. Like, I need to be your friend and we need to keep in touch. And so be bold, like take an interest in people, send them messages, like try to have those conversations. And when somebody that you really would look up to and would love to get advice and insight from replies and they agree to set up time, like come with an agenda, come with questions, come with like an ask, action items, whatever that might be. Really to make them feel useful too as a resource. Like I love to sit in conversations where I feel like I'm giving something instead of just chatting about whatever. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Jimena, any more questions? Okay.
Those are all the questions that we've had so far.
So I personally want to thank you guys for the information. I think it's been great, and I really enjoyed working with you guys. So thank you, and I encourage everyone on this call to reach out to each other and find your mentor, and you could do it here. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Thank you for your time and all your words of wisdom. I definitely want to be exactly like you all. Great mentors. I hope that we can connect. And for those of you who still want to drop in your LinkedIn, and connect with everybody on here. Ximena, do you mind dropping the LinkedIn document? This is where you can drop in your own information and see everybody else who's made it through the event today. Once again, thank you to all the panelists. And now we're gonna move over to our group photo. So if you do wanna be part of this photo, show your screen, show your pearly whites. I'm gonna stop sharing and then we're gonna count down. So let's see.
I think we need to unpin. Oh, there we go.
Yep, there we go. All right. All right. So, can y'all see everybody? There we go. All right. So I have my photographers ready. All right, so I'm gonna count everybody down. If you wanna be part of this photo, we're gonna share this on our social media for Techqueria and also Adyen. So show your pearly whites at 3, 2, 1. Let's do another one because we can never have enough. All right, 3, 2, 1. Yay. All right, thank you all so much for that. Look out for that photo on our social media. All right, and then before we head out, I just want to give it back to you all. And does anybody want to share any takeaways for today? Maybe 1 or 2 people. What are you walking away with? What did you learn? Just unmute yourself and go for it.
I'll go for it. I like the part about changing, try and fit into the culture and changing that to the value you bring yourself. So adding your culture. So I thought that was a really great way to see it.
Got to follow up right after my tocayo right there. Just in general, I think this is really great because I spoke with someone in the breakout room that was new to Techqueria, and I'm pretty sure that there's other people here too. So I think this was a really great event for them, to be segued kind of into the Techqueria and what we as an organization have to offer to Latinx identifying folks. So just wanted to say a general thank you to everyone for that.
Thank you, Jose. Anybody else?
The anonymous Ask Me Anything session idea, Laura, huge shout out. I'm so excited for that. I'm so excited to present it in so many forums at our company. So yeah, I'm gonna get to work.
Yes, do it. Let me know how it goes.
I will.
Yeah. Last thoughts. I see some people with their hands up, but I can't call on you because I'm sure
I'm always terrified to unmute myself in these large meetings because where I'm going to do it at the same time as someone else. But this was my first Techqueria event, and it's imposter syndrome to unmute myself, right? This is my first Techqueria event, and I can't wait to come to 1.5 million more because this was so well organized. It was insightful. The panel was great, and I loved every second of this. And I just want to say thank you all to everybody who put this on. I'm just excited to keep doing this. I just saw that mixer. I'm going to be putting that on my calendar. Thank you so much, guys. It was awesome.
Thank you, PJ. And on that note, this is a great team of so many volunteers. So shout out to every Techqueria lead who helped today, and also for partner Adyen who helped put this together for everybody. Just as a reminder, we're going to send an email with 5 takeaways for you to sign up with time with these 3 people here. And so you'll be able to talk about different things and specifically open roles at Adyen. So these are just some of the open roles that they have. And if you miss the great perks of Adyen is that you can also move around different offices and a lot of cool different things. So please schedule the time to chat with them. And I'm sure that this is the last thing. So Loteria prizes, who are the Loteria winners? So I knew we were running a little short on time. So I took the liberty of contacting people ahead of time. So congratulations to Graciano Avalos, John Carballo, Daniel Yepes, Alejandro Delgado, and Chris Estrada, who won today. So woohoo, are y'all here? I didn't hear back from Alejandro or Chris. Where you at?
I'm here. I didn't get a message though. Did I?
Oh,
maybe I did. Oh.
It gets lost in the chats. No worries. Yay. Okay, Alejandra. Yeah. All right. So just stick around for a few minutes afterwards, and then I'll get your information so we can send out your price. And that is a really great swag bag from Adyen provided by our partner today. So thank you all for coming today. If you have any feedback or anything you want to share with us, don't hesitate to email us at events@techqueria.org. You can also visit events.techqueria.org for more upcoming events. And Jasmine, I hear you have a really great event coming up pretty soon. You want to tell us about it?
Oh my God, we do. It's my new favorite event, mostly because I host it. It is the new member mixer, and it is happening on next Friday. Please bring your drinks and good vibes. It is not very professional, but it is very fun. And I'm really happy that we have some folks here who were at our last one. So I'm really excited to see you guys sticking around with Techqueria. I take this as a good sign that I didn't scare you. And I'm looking forward to more events. We also have a trivia night next Wednesday, the 31st, if you are at all into trivia. And you can come by yourself. It is teamless, so show off your wits on your own and dominate. That's pretty much my whole spiel. But thank you again for joining us tonight.
Yeah, and if you have an idea of any events, reach out to me, reach out to our events email at events@techqueria.org, and let's put it together. Let's make it happen. Thank you all again for coming, for showing up today, for being present with us, and for sharing your everything. To our panelists again, thank you for your time. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you.